some real world examples. We had a client that was actually two companies that were brought together in the waste handling industry. Company one provided service and parts for the truck chassis, and company two provided parts and service, et cetera, for the compactor units and all the things that go in the back. And so it was a common set of customers, in this case, waste handling businesses, in which the companies needed to rationalize disparate systems and come up with a joint to-market strategy, eliminate redundancies, and just really kind of achieve the value that was rationalized in terms of moving forward with the transaction. And some heavy commitments were made to the customer base along those lines. So as Jeff mentioned, we did a current state analysis, had extensive conversations with the management team and made sure that we had the change management and alignment that we needed, created a project charter, defined a future state, and then from there rolled out where it made sense, a common system, and pulled together common services where it made sense, as well as ensuring that we maintained local responsiveness, et cetera. There was changes that were made in terms of commingling warehouses. So there was a whole range of things that we did. But to do that, one of the first things that we did was we created the level zeros like we showed you, and then organized those into processes. And then we looked at where there was overlap in activities between the two. So company A, we said, okay, here's the set of practices that we want to identify from a future state. How well would they apply to company B? And those ended up being a very high degree of overlap, and were kind of color coded in. There were a few that didn't make sense to change in company A, and there were a few that didn't make sense to change in company B. But the idea was that we put together an overall scenario process model and color coded and identified what we wanted to merge together and what we wanted to keep separate. Throughout all this, we had to manage a bunch of divergency. One was a California culture, the other was a Midwest culture, very, very different. One was more of a big company, the other was kind of a private ownership. But we went through consolidated master files and took the steps that we needed to improve customer responsiveness. So we actually applied the maturity model within these processes and set up a transformation plan and drove through it to high degree of success. So values that were realized, lots of KPIs, transformation to a process management focus, and reduction in cost and improvement in responsiveness to the industry. The second venture was a situation where we worked with a company that wished to execute an exit strategy. And in this case, it was a little bit more straightforward, but the results are pretty dramatic. So again, we went through, created the maturity models across the set of processes, identified the transformation plan, and executed it. And what I'd like to point out here is that a lot of times when folks are looking at installing or implementing a new system, et cetera, they tend to focus in on the productivity increases. But by and large, in this day and age, companies are running pretty lean. We do see some productivity improvements, but the real value of the investments typically comes down to asset reduction, reducing inventory, providing better visibility to purchases to enable improvement in purchasing negotiations, better insight into product costs, and allowing you to better rationalize the product portfolios, or to have better insight into sales to be able to provide top line lift by properly focusing marketing dollars. Those are the things that really drive the value. Yes, there's a little bit of value in terms of the streamlining of the processes, but it's more the offshoot of that in terms of these other benefits. And that's really what we want to make a step towards understanding. So what is the benchmark within inventory, and how are we going to move it? So in this case, for this company, again, by applying a targeted improvement, we were able to reduce shipping process time by 35%. We improved shipping accuracy through improved order picking, et cetera, by 25%. We reduced finished goods on hand inventory by 10%. And all of that, frankly, came about through significant improvement in inventory accuracy. Moved them online to a real-time perpetual with material handling equipment, et cetera, and dramatically improved it. So a substantial business case, and then from there, then the company executed their exit strategy and are now part of a portfolio. Okay, so the last example is a food processor. They actually make items that go into the snacking segment, chip and snacking segment. And this one started out with just moving them from, for the most part, level 1 processes up to level 2, 3. From there, that was correcting of the major deficiencies. We defined a future state roadmap, selected a new system, implemented that, and got the company to a reasonably good set of process maturities. That company was sold to a PE firm. And then we started working with the PE firm in terms of how to roll up additional competitors in the market to pull them together. So then we went through and we did a process maturity assessment on acquisition targets multiple times, ultimately identified one that made sense and fed that back to them. They then went through the acquisition. We then looked at the two companies in terms of how to achieve the rationalization and the rollout of common processes and systems in terms of best practices, and again accomplished that in about 5 months. So to start, we said, let's go through and validate the strategy assumption that I just talked about in terms of, will this make sense in terms of putting these together? And then from there, made recommendations back to them in terms of how to move forward. So similar to the last company that I showed you, in this case, we identified those things that would be applicable in both companies, taking the best practices that had or improved practices, continuing to progress them in the first company, and then deciding which of those we were going to roll into the second company. Where did it make sense to move to more of a service center? Where did it make sense to leave it decentralized? We looked at the master data, laid all that out, and built the transformation plan to achieve the value. So I went through master data workshops, a lot of work around data cleansing, migrating that, building it, converting it, and taking them through a cutover, and quite successfully.